so you can hear other people, and there might be questions in the audience. I'm going to ask Angela if she would. Miss Quinn, are you ready? Are there anyone in the audience who would like to pose questions to the candidates?
There are 660,000 unpaid carers in Scotland, which is 1 in 8 of the Scottish population. These unpaid carers save the government £10.3 billion. That's the Scottish government every year. There are almost 30,000 unpaid carers.
We can't hear you, Stephanie.
Sorry. There are almost 30,000 unpaid carers in Ireland. And our health and social system, care systems absolutely fail if they didn't do their job. I would like to ask, how would you improve support and respite care for unpaid carers looking after friends and family? And also, how would you improve the profile and training of paid carers to support the above? The lack of respite care for unpaid carers is disgusting. And I would like very much to know, if you were elected, how you would set about improving that care.
When the previous, in this last council, we put £1 million a year extra into home care and into care for the elderly. And I think that that's what we propose to do in the future. I agree with you. Care at home and home carers are poorly supported. They're getting better. Once again, I go back to CAB, which is obviously my main experience of that. And indeed, that was the experience that they get. But I think that the CAB network supplies the kind of support that is helpful in identifying the sort of funding that they require. But I have no real answers other than all we can do is just keep putting money to the people who are actually caring for people. But the carers allowance, for instance, is paltry. It's a crazy amount of money for what they do. And the whole system relies on those people. If they fell into the system would just be overwhelmed in an instant.
I'd like to add as well that we have the highest population of over 65 in the whole of Ireland in there. And that really should put pressure on what you would like to do to help.
Yes, actually, it's nearly about 23.5% of men are over 60. That's true. Thank you.
Richard?
I think that there are carers of all sorts of ages. I deal with young carers in my school who look after parents who are invalid, and a lot of the support that they have had over the last few years was pulled away. Again, it was a budget that just disappeared. And unfortunately, if there isn't a statutory requirement, when the cuts come, it tends to cut those areas that we all feel are essential, but because we don't have a statutory obligation to fulfil those requirements, they tend to get pulled away. It's all down to, at the end of the day, how much central government gives local authorities. And whatever you like to say about party politics, central government in Scotland and Holyrood has kept a very, very tight rein on local authority spending. I mean, local authorities have no extra money to hand out. They're constantly having to cut budgets, and the next year is probably going to be one of the most difficult years for local authorities. There's no way that central government is in a sense protecting local government from the spending cuts. I don't see them in Holyrood trimming so that we can have more money delivered at grassroots where the need is required. Instead, Highland Council is constantly having to trim and find other ways of trying to save money, like High Life Irish, putting that out. So it's not going to be an easy answer.
The answer to your question is I don't know. But in very, very, very difficult times, I listened to the Radio 4 programme today, and they said that there's a potential for 20% of the population to be diabetic. So in answer to your question, what do you use, judging priorities? The real villains in this piece are the political establishment of 20 or 30 years ago that never failed, that failed to address the demographics that would predicted these type of problems, where we've got an elderly population, a falling workforce, and now we're having to face things when we should have planned for it 20 or 30 years ago. These are very, very difficult decisions, and I don't really have the answers to it at the moment. I don't think I would have the answers to it. It's a much, much bigger discussion.
Any of the other candidates?
Thank you. I agree with what both Richard has said and Mike has said. When I retired 5 years ago from local government, I was a full-time carer to one elder relative, my aunt, who died at 91, and right after that, my mother-in-law, who's now in a care home in Forest, is a poultry son that's allocated per week for carers. So it's something that central government needs to address. It's a ticking time bomb across Scotland, especially in Highland, because we do have an ageing population, and what will happen in due course in terms of care in the community and care homes, because we all have to access these services in the not-too-distant future. And something probably, again, the council will have to address, just like in housekeeping, essential expenditure and desirable expenditure. Now, they're very tinkered to date with that, but possibly we're breaking new ground, we'll have to break new ground, because we've got to divide the cake up, and some part of that cake will have to have a bigger slice for certain activities. How do you fund that? It means that certain activities presently provided by council may have to have a much larger cut, because cuts are with us year on year, and some services possibly might have to go altogether. And those are very tough decisions that have to be taken by all Highland councillors, and in fact all councillors across Scotland and the UK, because the money just isn't there anymore. We can access certain third-party funding avenues, but the mainstream funding that's allocated to Highland Council does come from Holyrood and Westminster. So these are some of the issues that need to be addressed by council.
Does anyone else want to? Yes.
Thank you, Stephen. I think one of the big issues in there just now is there is no respite care locally. So when the contract for respite went out, none of the local care homes were given the contract. So now, if anyone has a family member requiring respite, they have to go to either a local authority home somewhere else in Highland, or to one of the block purchase spaces in Inverness or Brampton. And I think that's really quite appalling. I've been in contact with a family about that just recently, because it means when the wife's away, her husband won't have any family members visiting because they don't have transport to get to the respite provision. The other thing is the voluntary sector has got a big role to play in this. I work on the Crossroads Committee, and I think it's really, I wasn't happy at all with the decision that Cargon was given the respite contract for Nairn. That was for home-based respite, and how the service is delivered is political decisions at the end of the day, and the care for older people and adults is now handled by health. It's all been transferred over to health, so it's not actually the council by the service in from health. All our staff have been paid over to the health service, so that affects the influence we have as well in that matter.
Any other questions from the audience? This the gentleman, Angela, the gentleman back there.
So, the Holyrood government can only do with the money that is given, and it's fees and council tax, and helping students, the prescriptions, and all these things that it can. So it can't be sure when it's not there.